Howdy doody, my name is Susie, and today I thought I would share with you some tips and tricks that I've learned on sewing Sunbrella material. Now today I'm actually making a Bimini top or a canopy for a pontoon boat, and it's 10 by 10 feet. So this is a really big project, and in terms of the level of skill to make this canopy, I would say it's difficult simply because you're dealing with such a large amount of fabric that it does make even the easiest stitching a little bit more challenging. But I wanted to share with you some really important tips on how to sew Sunbrella so that you can apply it to any projects that you may have at home. Maybe you want to make a canopy for the top of your pergola or any other household projects that you've got for the yard. Now the first thing that I wanted to do in making this canopy was try to find fabric, Sunbrella fabric, that was at a sale price. Sunbrella fabric can be a little bit expensive, and for this canopy I needed so much material that I kind of kept an eye out for a sale. And sure enough, I did find fabric, this fabric, on for 75% off, but unfortunately there wasn't enough of one color to do the whole canopy. But the sale was too good to pass up, so what I did was I decided to do a two-tone, which is very nautical, in cream and navy blue for the canopy top. So that was my first trick in being able to make a really economical canopy, including all the accessories such as the special thread that I'm using, the basting tape, the velcro, odds and ends and bits and pieces that I need. This whole project is going to come in under $200. So I think it's, if you can find the fabric on sale, it's really going to make a huge difference. So in working with this project, and I'm just going to give you an overview as I go along, I'll attach a template of what I did in terms of the application, and then you can change the measurements according to your own customized project. So a couple of things that are recommended is the principle behind the Sunbrella and keeping it as waterproof as possible. And Sunbrella is water resistant. It's not 100% waterproof. It feels like fabric, but it's made of polyester and it's got UV protection on it, etc. So when using Sunbrella for an application such as a Bimini or any type of cover, you want to make the fewest holes possible because the holes from the stitches compromise in the waterproofness of your material. So what they recommend is for marine applications to use the largest stitch that you possibly can on your home machine. Commercial sewing machines that are used to make these canopies professionally are much heavier, and they can create a much larger stitch, and I think it's a number 6 stitch. But for my purposes, my machine goes to 4. That is the widest stitch, so that is what I'm going to use. The other thing that's really important besides the length of the stitch is the tension that you have on your machine. So we're looking to have a perfect stitch that is looped from the top and the bottom equally. And in order to do that, the tension is really important. Now what I use in terms of figuring out the tension is I put the tension at the medium point, and then I take a sample piece of material and I sew it. I look at the back and I check out the stitch, and I keep altering the tension until I find the perfect stitch. And that's just how I do it. Set your machine on the longest stitch, and you got to play with the tension in order to make sure that your stitches are going all the way through. So I've got it on my longest stitch, and I've got it to 5.5 for tension. So I'm just going to do a sample. And you can see that the top stitch is stitched all the way through. The bottom stitch, which has the wrong tension, when you turn it around, look what happens. You can pull the string right out. because the tension isn't correct. So you have to play with your machine, make sure that the tension is right so that you cannot pull the stitch out and it's fully integrated. So those are just a couple of starter tips for you. The other thing that's really important is the basting tape, the double-sided basting tape. It really makes a huge difference in keeping everything in place so that you can sew it very nice and neatly and straight. To make this canopy or bimini, these are the materials that you will need. Project, you're going to need a sewing machine, you're going to need a very long table, your Sunbrella material, and I have it in 2 tones, cream and navy blue. You're going to need some polyester ribbon and some velcro, and the ribbon is actually going to create a ladder type effect with the velcro in order to secure to the tube of the canopy. So we've got that in white. I've also bought some navy blue polyester ribbon, and that's purely decorative. I've got some pinking shear just to finish off some of the edges, a good set of scissors. You want outdoor polyester UV protected thread, a measuring tape, and 3/8 basting tape. This is double-sided stick-on. This is not only going to help us sew and guide our fabric, but it's also going to create the waterproof seal. I've just bought a machine needle. This is for denim or jeans. It works great with Sunbrella, but you can also ask the textile attendant what their recommendation would be. A little tip, you might want to store any extra basting tape, the double-sided stick-on basting tape, in a Ziploc bag, just to make sure that you preserve all the glue that's in the tape, and the bag will keep it from drying out. And that tape is known as product number 129. I ordered mine from Amazon. And the only other thing that you really want to keep in mind that makes this a little bit more challenging is that because you're making something that's going to be secured to an existing frame, the measurements have to be very precise. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my polyester strip and I'm going to mark the length of my canopy along where the aluminum tubing would go. Mine is 10 feet long, and essentially I've cut 4-inch Velcro pieces, and I'm going to overlap them 1 inch. Overlap at 1 inch, which is the width of my polyester. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by sewing everything in the middle, and then I'm going to come back and sew it onto the canvas on either side. So right now I just want to create a ladder, and I know I need 9 of these. An easy way to do this without having to measure is just take my full ribbon and I'm just going to fold it over. So I fold it over the full length of the ribbon, and I'm going to use this as my guide to attach all of my Velcro straps to create the ladder. This just helps so I don't have to measure. So I'm just going to mark that with a pin. Where it folds, I'll mark it with a pin. Is that my Velcro is facing the right way. It's going to wrap onto itself like this along the pole. So I want to make sure to place them all facing down. Like this. So now I'm creating my ladder, and I'm going to keep going until I'm done. So now I've got my ladder with my Velcro, and I'm using coordinating colored thread, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to sew right down the middle and attach each one of these to the center of the ribbon. Attached my Velcro to the center of my ribbon, and I could stop here, cut it, and start up again, but it's just easier to sew all the way along. So there, I've got my ladder all sewn together. So I've got 5 pulls. So I've got 5 more ladders to build. Working on my center panel, and what I want to do is get my ribbon and velcro ladder attached directly to the center of the middle panel. My ladder, I'm going to fold it in half. This is the midway point. So I've taken my center panel, I fold it in half widthwise, I fold it in half lengthwise, and now this point and corner, I'm going to pin it because this is the very center of my fabric. And I'm going to add my ladder right in the middle of this point. This is the center. And I'm going to position it. This is the rope. This is the Velcro. I'm going to position it with the Velcro facing down and the rope on top. So I'm going to position that right in the middle of the fabric. And I'm going to pin it right across one side. So I have my Velcro sandwiched between the ribbon, the polyester ribbon, and the fabric. Same to the other side. This polyester ribbon is very, very strong, so it just reinforces where this canvas is going to lay on top of the metal frame. And now I can sew this all the way along. I'm using coordinating colored thread, which is the white thread for this cream canvas. And I'm going to sew it on this side because I'm going to need the ribbon to use as a guide for my seam. I'm going to sew on either side of the ribbon. So now I'm going to be running a seam right down the center panel, and I'm going to sew my ribbon. I'm going to sew it down one side, then I'm going to turn it around and sew the other side. So I'm going to start off by making my seam, and I'm going to come in just 1/8 of an inch. And I'm just going to roll my fabric so that I have room to push it through while keeping it nice and flat. So I've come to the end of the ribbon, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to sew across, turn it around, and go down the other side. I've rolled up the other side, and now I'm going to sew all the way down the other side of the ribbon. Remember to do an additional back lock on the ends. So now I've got my ladder with the Velcro sewn directly in the center of my middle panel. And I'll just show you with my broom. I don't want to get my fabric dirty, but with my broom, the way this is going to work is the aluminum framing from the pontoon is going to lie this way, and we are going to wrap the Velcro around the tube, and it's going to be held this way. So you can see, and obviously the broom is smaller than the pontoon tubing, but you can see how this will secure the canopy directly onto the frame. And I'm just going to work with where I want the decorative ribbon to go. And I already know that I want the decorative ribbon to be like this. And then there will be a seam here in the navy blue. So you can see the effect that I'm trying to create. So I'm just going to place this to see where I like it, if I like it a little bit further out. And I think I like it like this. So you can see by just adding this simple stripe of navy blue, it almost looks like we're adding navy blue and a stripe of cream, a stripe of navy blue, and then the middle of the canopy. So I think this is going to look great, and I'm going to add it here. So now I'm going to do my measurements because I want to make sure that my ribbon is placed equally on this side as it is on the other side. I'll pin it and sew it. Now for the placement of my ribbon on this side, I want to make sure that I know that I'm going to have 1/2 inch seam allowance here. So it's going to be like this. And I like this distance. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a measurement. I'm going to pick, it's almost 6 inches. So I just pick a measurement that's easy. I'm going to do that on this side, and then I'm going to do that on the other, and then I'm going to sew it. So I've changed out my thread to navy blue to match my navy blue strip, and I'm going to just sew about 1/8 of an inch in from the seam, down one side and then down the other. Now I just hold your fabric taut so that your stripe is perfect. So I've sewn my stripe, that's what it looks like in the front. And then on the inside it looks like this. And you can see the lines are perfectly even because we're using our ribbon in order to guide us. So now I've got my decorative stripes sewn. And in the center, I've got my other ribbon with the velcro, and this is going to secure to the center post. Now I'm going to work on my 2 side panels. The line, and this line is exactly at 60 inches, which is halfway from the center. So that means it's going to hit my pontoon frame tubing at exactly 10 feet. And this is going to be the underside. Then I'm going to start from the center point, tacking down my ribbon on this side, and then I'll flip it over and do the other. So I'm going to sew my 2 panels together, and I want 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I'm just marking it with painter's tape. It just makes it a much easier guide to follow. So I pinned my ribbon with my Velcro at 60 inches from the center of my canvas. But I didn't sew it because I wanted to make sure that it was the exact measurement, because I need this to fall on all of my tube framing. So I actually went ahead and just seamed together 1/2 inch seam, the center panel and the right panel. And now from the center panel, I can measure 60 inches, and I'm actually right on. I've double checked my measurements, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add the ribbon. I'm going to sew the ribbon with the Velcro onto my side panel. So you can see this is the center of the Bimini, and I've sewn my ladder all the way down, and this is the side. I've sewn that down. That's the other side. So I've just folded it in half, good sides in, and now I need to work on waterproofing the seam where these two I've sewn together, and this I'm going to use by adding the 3/8 inch double-sided tape, which is going to create a waterproof sealant. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to sew right along the edge very carefully, because when I turn it over on the other side, I want to see that navy blue stitch along the cream. I think it'll make it look really nice. So it'll look something like this. So we're taking our seam, our basting, our double-sided basting, and we're just running it right along the seam. So I've run the tape along the seam. My table's not long enough, so I'm going to stop there. I'm going to peel back the tape. So there's the end of our tape, and we're just going to peel back that plastic coating, exposing that sticky side. And then we're just going to take our seam and we're going to just neatly press it down into the tape, which will make it much easier to stitch along both sides. So I'm going to do half of my canopy and then I'm going to do the other half. So I have my seam taped down and now I'm going to come back and I'm going to sew just along here. So you can see how much I've already sewn. And I've just got a little bit to go. So again, we're flapping it over and we're just sewing along here. So I've sewn down the seam and this is what it looks like on the right side. So it just adds another little detail and it tidies it up really nicely. So it helps if you roll your fabric up in a noodle, and this is the side that's going to be going in through the machine. So I've got it rolled up and I can feed it through the machine and then I'm going to stitch along the other side. So now I've folded the fabric or the canopy in half. I've marked the center with a pin and now I want to measure out from the center of the fabric. I want to measure exactly 60 inches because that is the line that I'm going to lay my ladder with the Velcro going on the horizontal, and this is going to fit the front of the Bimini and the back. So it's a new day and I'm ready to take on the corners of the canopy or the Bimini. And essentially I've got everything sewn. The only thing left to do are the corners and the hem. I've got my ribbon, which I've sewn in a perfect square, 10 by 10. This ribbon is essentially going to line up with the frame of the pontoon. The inside corner and the outside corner, that outside corner, and I'm going to line up the raw edge, which is going to be my hem. So I've got something like this. Now, if I was to fold this over and line it up with the hem on one side, like this, then that would give me a 90-degree corner. But I want an additional inch on each corner to make sure that it fits the Bimini properly, especially because I'm not on site. I'm making this from home and delivering it to Epsley. So when you take this over, when you fold it over and you line it up with the hem like this to get that perfect 90-degree angle, then your measurement from the tip to the corner is going to be the same as your overlap. So mine's 4 inches, this is 4 inches. Now, if I want to increase that angle to allow an extra inch, then I'm going to measure down. Instead of measuring down to 4 from the corner, I'm going to measure down to 3.5. So I've measured down from the corner to 3.5. And now if I go back to that corner and go to the 3.5 mark and I fold that over, look what happens. It no longer lines up with the hem. It's now peeking over. So when you turn it this way, I'll turn it from the inside so you can see. When you turn it this way, this is how much overlaps beyond the hem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this off to level it with my hem. And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to cut that right along the hemline. So I've cut that triangle right along the hem line. So I'm giving myself a 1/2 inch hem, pinned my 1/2 inch hem, and I'm going to do that all the way around, and you can see that once it is hemmed, I'm going to leave this open. I don't need to sew this corner because I'm sewing it all the way around. It'll be secured because it's locked in. I've locked in that triangle right into the hem. So when you turn it right side out, there's a little bit more flexibility, but it's totally waterproof and you don't need to do that corner. So we're just going to do the hem. So I'm going to sew my hem all the way around, and this is going to give me that perfect additional 1 inch at every corner of the pontoon frame. So I hope you found some of these tips useful that you can apply to your project. So if you like this video, I hope you share it. If you'd like to see more content, I hope you subscribe. Happy sewing and bon voyage!